Magandang umaga, Filipinas. Good morning from Canada. I'm Thomas I. Likeness, reporting from our Eagle News studio in the Western Canadian province of Alberta. I'm in the city of Edmonton, bringing you news from across the country. Now, I know many of you either have a relative in Canada or know somebody that's emigrated here. We'll keep you up to date with what's happening in their new home. Now, we've got a bit of a time difference here. About 14 hours, as a matter of fact. You see, it's still yesterday. It's still Sunday here, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, just about dinner time. Getting a little bit hungry here, but anyway, we'll be here with you for the next 15 minutes. Oh, have you all got your morning coffee yet? Okay, take a minute to get that, and I'll just give you a little bit of background here about my country. We're large in area, but relatively small in population. You see, we span 5 different time zones. It takes about 10 hours to fly from Victoria, British Columbia on the west coast to St. John's, Newfoundland, way over on the east coast. That's about a 10-hour flight. Population-wise, well, there's about 38 million of us. We're about a tenth of the size of the United States when it comes to population. Oh, this is what it looked like when I went out this morning. Just have a look at your screen here. You see that? A little bit of snow coming down. And it's April. I thought it was spring. You see, in central Alberta here where I live, we had temperatures around -6 degrees this morning, light snow falling. Elsewhere in the country, they were quite a bit better off, mostly sunny temperatures, and they were in the 10 to 12 degree mark. So kind of like, I guess, Baguio in the wintertime. A warm day in the wintertime in Baguio. I don't know. 10 to 12 degrees anyway in the rest of the country. Well, let's check the news for today. COVID-19 still dominating our headlines. The federal government has put the money in the bank for its emergency aid program for workers and businesses. It's a holiday weekend here, but lawmakers spent part of that weekend in Parliament dealing with the legislation they needed to pass so that they had the money for the payouts. Hundreds of thousands of people have lost their jobs because of the pandemic. Many of them have already started receiving the allowance of $2,000 a month. They'll get that for the next 4 months, unless, of course, they go back to work. As well, those who had to isolate or care for someone who's infected are also receiving help. Now, businesses are eligible for wage subsidies if they can rehire some of their workers. And there are also low-interest loans for businesses as well. Let's look at what's happening around the country. The most heavily infected province is in Quebec. They have more than 12,000 cases. 328 people, sadly, have died from the infection. Now in Montreal, 31 people in just one nursing home succumbed to the virus. And Premier Francois Legault says the situation looks like a lot of major negligence. The police and coroner's office are investigating that nursing home. Apparently, residents in the home were not given meals. They'd been left unattended with full diapers and soiled beds. It was just a terrible, terrible situation. As a result, more than 40 private nursing homes will be visited by the public health authorities. Inspectors want to see just how they're handling the coronavirus outbreak and make sure that everything is up to standard so they don't have another situation like this. We move over one province now to Ontario. 401 new cases have been reported in the last 24 hours. More than 7,000 people are infected, 274 deaths, and 261 people in intensive care. And that's a critical number, that intensive care number, the number of people in hospitals. That's what public health authorities, the epidemiologists really look at. Who's in the hospital and are they seriously ill? Because this gives them an idea of just the depth of the pandemic. Well, just how are people in Ontario handling this? The province is pretty much in a state of lockdown, but people can get out and around for a walk. And despite this lockdown, this Ontario resident, her name is Alison Orens. She lives in the Niagara Falls area. She actually went down to the falls. That's one of the country's most popular tourist destinations. We'll have a look at it as we listen to Orens telling us it's strange to see this area is virtually deserted. There's nobody around.
Well, in this particular area, if we didn't have a lockdown, if we weren't in a state of emergency, this area would just be flooded with tourists everywhere. People taking pictures, their families. We'd have people around here having picnics. The hotels would be booming with people as well. Our casino especially. Our casino, I've never seen the casino shut down, and now both casinos are completely closed.
Arsen says what's bothering her, what's really affecting her, and I'm sure many others, is she just doesn't know what's going to happen. She says the future is what's unsettling for her.
There's too many uncertainties and no answers, and there's no time, there's no length or span to let us know how long this is going to go on for. That's the scary part. I think that's what's scaring me the most.
Day weekend, Prime Minister Justin Trudeau talked about that. He spoke about those feelings, and he says, don't keep it in.
If you just feel overwhelmed, we'll soon have more to say about how you can access resources that can help. If you're in crisis, reach out, lean on each other, and know that we will get through this together.
You know, I think that advice could apply worldwide because clearly we cannot do this alone. You know, although we must practice the social distancing and we can't visit in person now. I can't go see my sister or my brother. We live all in the same city, but we just don't visit each other's homes now. But we cannot become hermits. We can't hide ourselves away. Like the Prime Minister says, no matter where you are, reach out. Let those feelings out. Talk to somebody about it because the loneliness is almost as bad as the infection. We move now to the province of Alberta, where I live. Our province is sending medical supplies to 3 other provinces to help them fight the COVID-19 pandemic. The equipment's going to British Columbia, and Ontario and Quebec. Now, we talked about Ontario and Quebec. BC as well has been hard hit by this infection. The equipment includes personal protective equipment and ventilators. Our Premier, his name is Jason Kenney, says Alberta has extra supplies, and giving them to other provinces is just the right thing to do.
But I, for one, as an Albertan and as a Canadian, could not in conscience watch us stockpile massive amounts of surplus equipment while we see many of our fellow Canadians in some provinces within days of running out of some of these supplies. We are all in this together. And let me refer back to how I began by talking about the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you.
Kenney says the province will send N95 masks, procedural masks, some gloves, goggles, and ventilators to these provinces. And again, he stresses that we have enough here to take care of our needs. Our province right now has reported about 1,600 cases, and we've sadly had 40 deaths. Alberta's also matching donations to charities to help out in the pandemic, charities that are helping out in the pandemic. The province will provide up to $2 million in matching donations. So if somebody gives $1, the province will give $1 to match that. Now, charities have been hard hit because of the number of people out of work. They're just not getting the donations they used to. Many food banks reporting that their cupboards are bare. Other charities say donations have dried up. They can't continue their programs. They can't continue to help out people, whether it be people needing shelter or whatever their needs are. They simply don't have the funds to do it. So it's good to see, again, the Alberta government stepping up and saying, we're going to help out too. Let's move over to British Columbia on the West Coast. The number of people hospitalized there seems to be leveling off. Now, this is a sign that the pandemic may be close to being under control in that region. And if that trend continues, some restrictions may be eased. But don't get too anxious about this because life will still be far from normal. We can't let all the restrictions go at once because then you're going to get into that second wave. You're going to have a second lockdown, and that second lockdown is going to be worse on the economy. The one thing about Canadian public health authorities, they seem to be following the science, not the politics. Yes, there is pressure to let's open up the economy, let's get people back to work. But on the other hand, we're warned by epidemiologists, don't let that happen too soon, because if this virus isn't under control, and of course, we don't have a treatment yet, we don't have a vaccine yet, and if it isn't under control, we end up with a second wave, a second lockdown, and your economy is going to be worse off. Anyway, BC, 1,445 cases of COVID-19, 58 deaths. We go over to the other side of the country, the 4 Atlantic provinces. Remember I told you they're 10 hours away? Those 4 provinces report about 800 cases, but only 5 deaths. Manitoba and Saskatchewan each have less than 300 cases each. The far north, the 3 northern territories report a total of 13 cases. The country as a whole, the latest numbers, about 24,000 cases of COVID-19 across Canada, total of 674 deaths. Some personal observations now. I get out and about a little bit because I work in an essential industry, so I travel around my city quite a bit. Generally, people are practicing social distancing. I see a lot of people staying home. You know, this has been a holiday weekend. I think it is worldwide pretty much. But on this holiday weekend, I didn't notice anybody hosting get-togethers with family or friends. I look up and down my street. There's no additional cars. There's no relatives, no friends coming over, no potlucks, no karaoke, no big celebration. If they're celebrating, they're doing it at home. They're doing it virtually, video conferencing. I mean, that's a one thing. If this would have happened 25 years ago, truly we would have been isolated. But we've got this marvelous technology now. So although we're physically apart, we can still be together. I did the weekly shopping this Saturday. We go shopping once a week. Lining up at the supermarket, people kept their distance. We're 6 feet apart. Nobody's cutting in the line either in front of you. Only a few ignored the suggestion that just one person per household go into the store. I noticed one family with grown children and mom and dad there. They all pile into the store, just having a good time. That kind of goes against the suggestion that we should isolate ourselves, that we should practice social distance. You don't need the whole gang there to pick up the groceries. I guess some people just don't get it or think the advice doesn't apply to them. The interesting thing, though, is stores are telling people leave their reusable bags and baskets at home. And instead, they're just not charging for the plastic grocery bags. They just give them to you free. I guess the environmentalists may not be too happy over that, but they don't want people bringing in anything that might be contaminated. Store shelves have fewer items on them, but they're not sold out of everything. I haven't noticed people leaving the store with the carts piled high with the items that they're hoarding. No, people are kind of getting into it, being a little more responsible. So what's our lifestyle doing for this? I got to get out of here in about 60 seconds. I like to think of this as an opportunity to embrace what's really important. You know, things like our health, our families, what we believe. Take the time now to consider what's important, what has real meaning. Sadly, in a prosperous country like Canada, we've let that prosperity get in the way of what's important. In the meantime, I wish you all good health. Take care of others and take care of yourselves. Stay home, stay safe, and stay tuned to Eagle News for accurate and balanced coverage of the COVID-19 pandemic. In Edmonton, Canada, Thomas I. Likeness, Eagle News. We live in interesting times.